Hello, and thank you for joining our Stream of Conscious ADHD podcast. I'm Heidi Fawcett, along with my sister Heather. We are Gen X in menopause and surprise, newly diagnosed with ADHD. Since we found out about our ADHD during the pandemic, we have spent most weekends sitting in my backyard in Brooklyn with our champagne brunch discussing the impact, the reflections, the grief, the stories. Many adults are now finding they were never diagnosed, so we thought we would bring everyone into our backyard discovery sessions, hoping it will help. We laugh, we cry, we are stream of consciousness conversationalists. We hope you enjoy listening to our discovery and perhaps glean some comfort from it. Here we go, into the backyard.
It's just amazing to me. And I know this goes to why people who are diagnosed so late in life have grief. They go through all the steps of grief because they realize their life could have been so different if somebody had diagnosed them up front and they could have,
If I were only a very obnoxious boy,
right.
somebody would have paid attention. But if you're just like a quiet girl who is trying to focus but can't, is like the brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, but not on the thing that it should be.
Right.
Focus in algebra class, but there's
Whooshing
like
is happening. Whooshing is happening.
Whooshing.
There you go. Something has to happen extreme for a parent or whoever to go. And I wouldn't have known. I would not have known.
We have no experience in this space.
Right. We're like,
she
acts just like I do. She's totally fine.
We have no experience in our particular pathology, apparently.
Oh my God, it's so tragic. It's like it prevents from fixing that vicious cycle, not even on a behavior, I don't want to say behavioral, but having a parent who is abusive, then the child becomes abusive to their child and like that vicious cycle. This is like, oh, they're totally fine. They act just like I do. Like why would you ask any differently? So the earlier it's recognized, then we can hopefully nip this in the bud. Grace has said to me, because I do this thing now with her in the morning I told you about, when we walk to school, I say 2 things I'm grateful for, and she says 2 things she's grateful for. And it just helps with going forward through your day, being grateful, right? And it helps just, I don't know, the universe, her mood, all the things.
All of it.
One of the first times we went through this, Grace said, "Oh, I'm thankful to you." And she said that to me on many occasions, that she's like, "Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me life. I'm so glad you had me and I'm here and you're my mom," and all these things. And I'm like, oh, but the thing is, I never really thought about that as a kid. Like, that
Neither did
that
I.
the parents gave us life, like any of that stuff.
Same.
And I don't know whether it's just because Grace is a bit of an old soul or that we just were so like wrapped up in all the chaos that we never even thought twice about it. Or we thought like, oh, great, I'm here on Earth and I
No,
got to put up with this bull crap. Right?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. No. But I don't think people give enough thought to when you have a child, in order for you to have self-confidence. I mean, it's one thing to let your children be free range, right? But it's another when you are negatively impacting their identity, their personality, and whether it's like you don't understand and you're mentally ill or there's ADHD or whatever.
Yeah.
But being able to instill, it's a delicate balance.
And I think it's not, to your point, I think there are things that impact your ability to create that situation for your children. You may yourself have mental illness. You may yourself have ADHD. And I think like socioeconomic issues definitely impact of how people can parent their children, because they're just very hand to mouth all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't make enough money to pay the bills, it's very difficult to create a good situation for your children. And I think that is very common today. It was common when we were children. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we had a similar situation. We had mental illness with the mother, we had with the father figure, and we were poor. So you pile that on, and that's still present today. I think our current economic system is not good for working class people. So working class people are struggling, and they don't have time to focus on
Right.
managing their children's well-being
Well-being,
and
yeah.
their own state of feeling comfortable and their own well-being.
Right. And I think that leads into like you and I having experienced that childhood, and then we were both like determined to go to college and try to better our lives. And
That didn't come till later, not even like the regular time frame.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But in doing that, and we went to college, even though we were like work during the day and went to college at night, and it just like it was a bigger effort. And even having to implement different strategies to get ourselves through college because we still did not know we had ADHD.
Oh man.
And we were very determined to get to that point, that then when we even had the degrees and we went into the corporate world and we had a career, like a full-fledged career, we still have imposter syndrome. We still doubt that people really know. We're like, I'm really not that important. I really don't know my contribution to this. I don't know. But then even after all of that, you've got to the point where you're making a salary, you're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. And you're not filling your gas tank full of only $10 at a time because that's all you can afford. And have a nice buffer. We still have that scarcity mindset that I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job, and then my whole life will fall apart and I'll go back to being that. And that is depressing, that we can't just say, you know what, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the capitalist model, but
Yeah.
that's an entirely
Yeah.
different.
But I'm sure a lot of people can relate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And thinking about having ADHD as a young adult, not knowing you have ADHD, struggling with keeping a job, I just waking up in the morning going, this is just too much.
Yes.
Too much.
Right.
I can't. And because you have a job that doesn't have meaning for you, you cannot rally. And I always play this game in my head where I would just, and I still do this to this day, where I rationalize with myself over a variety of things. I bargain with myself. And I recall back in the day when I would have a job that, because I didn't have a college degree, it was just a job that was just whatever. And to get up in the morning to do that job was like the hardest thing in the world.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to call in sick.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then you just go through job after job.
Yeah.
After
And so you kind of roll through, which I think is pretty typical. And then you decide, okay, I'm going to go to college to do the thing that I love. And I know that it may not be clear to everyone what the thing is that you love. Like for me, I'm a science nerd. And I've always been a science nerd since I was a child, when I was hanging out with birds when I was 10 years old. Always a science nerd. And it spanned the entire scope of science, which was good for me because that was a very broad space. But I didn't go to college until I was like 27 because I have a job. I can't afford to go to college. And I didn't know how. And the internet didn't exist yet. And that's the thing. I think we could have circumvented a lot of time-wasting things if the internet existed. However, I filled out my FAFSA. I sent in my college application. I remember shoving it under the door on the last day.
Because that's how you roll.
That's how we roll. And then they're like, yeah, you're admitted. And I'm like, oh, crap, I have no money. But yeah,
I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people, because I feel like more people are in this struggle mode than people who are just like, here you go. Oh, you want to go to college? Here, let me.
and our parents were so disconnected, there were no expectations, right?
Oh, absolutely
They're
not.
just like, we just need you to get a job and get the hell out.
But, and the thing is, thinking about having a job, and even without ADHD, I think is so unfair, is to expect an 18-year-old to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. I mean, you're freaking 18. You're not even fully formed yet, right? Like, it's like a thing.
But when you lived to be like back in the day, when you would have a vocation that was like herder or
Right.
cow milker, and you lived to be 50, yeah, that was reasonable.
Sure.
But praise Jesus, we get to live to be like 80.
100. What are you talking about? 80.
All right, 100.
100 it is now.
Fine, yeah, I'm in.
But the thing is that, yes. And so to make a decision, because I remember when I was in high school, I was like, I want to be an accountant. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah,
And then I got out of high school, I got a job at this woman, Elsa Worthman, who I just,
hallelujah.
of her is as abrupt as hell as she was on everyone, including
She was
me.
everyone's Jewish mother.
Yes, yeah, yes, exactly. So I did accounts receivable, and I was like, I freaking hate this. And then I worked at that lab, and then I finally got the job. But I worked so many jobs in between, like a chiropractor, the hotel, the little boutique shop near Gold Milk Road, so many places, and all of them, I didn't give a crap. They didn't inspire me. It was like getting me out of bed to get in there. I'm like, I think I need to call in sick today, just as you were saying. It was only until it's when something inspires you. And I know that's the whole thing with ADHD is about the thing that can make you hyper-focused, that gives you that dopamine hit. That when I started working at the law firm, and I loved it so much. But I think the reason I loved it so much was because I finally felt like that corporate person I always wanted to be, like that career person I always wanted to be. I just wanted to be a professional. And it was the first job I ever had where I felt like a professional, and I had to dress professionally, and I had
How was your imposter syndrome in that?
I was working in DC, right? So my imposter syndrome didn't come into play right away because I was the lowest man on the totem pole. I was the receptionist, right?
Yeah.
And that was during that time when it was like the first time I was working on a computer, and LexisNexis was the first like internet thing. I know, it's so crazy. But that was when I started writing my memoirs. And I would be on the computer, like, because I had so much downtime. And I just write and write.
While you worked there, I had my car towed from my neighborhood, and I'm like, Heidi, I need your help. And you sent me a letter on legal letter, and they backed down because they had no evidence of my parking illegally. And it's nothing like legal letterhead.
Well, we faked letterhead. We faked it when we evicted Dave from the
Okay, now we're going into it.
big rabbit hole. Big rabbit hole. Okay, so
but I recall when I was I don't know why I ended up working at that stupid air filter company. And guess what? No one is inspired working with air filters. And I asked you to help me learn how to use Word Perfect. Word Perfect is dead and 6 feet under for 20 years.
right.
But I'm like,
Called Pages now, right?
I need to learn how to do word processing. And I came to your office, and you were trying to teach me how to do it. And I'm like, yeah. It was overwhelming.
Oh my gosh.
It's hysterical looking back because everyone knows how to do Word in their sleep.
I know. And
Children in utero know how to do Word.
well, and it's just funny because technology, as we evolve into it, or it evolves in our world, it's intimidating even to get, not even to get a new phone, but even to get a new update. Sometimes you're like, crap, why isn't this working the way I expect it to work anymore? Google, the other day, I was trying to right click on a tab to say, reopen a tab I just closed. It doesn't do that anymore. I'm like, how do I do that now?
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying. And I think that's the beautiful thing about having a sister who understands your plight and wants to help you get over that hurdle. And when you were like, oh my gosh, I know you love technology, and I'm working at this company who will pay for your college tuition, and it's a technology you must come work here. And I had enough with the law firm.
Come for an interview. It's Pan Davidson.
Yeah.
Giant tornado. Oh, we have to go to the basement? Okay.
Oh my God, that was so crazy. So crazy. But when I was at the law firm, because I was at the law firm and it's something that resonated with me, I felt like a real career person. I was like, I want to be a lawyer. And then I watched the lawyers be assholes. And then I was like, I don't want to be there anymore. And then I went back, started community college again with just the little, just like throwing everything at the wall, see what sticks. I was just taking random classes.
But that's college.
Yes.
That's college.
Yes. But I was like in my mid-20s, somebody who has to decide when they're 18 to, okay, here's
But
my
it
route.
doesn't even matter. It's like college is like you take the curriculum and then you're like, oh my God, that thing, the 5th class that I take, that moves me. So I'm going to focus on that thing.
Right. But I thought, don't you have to pick a major when you go into it or no?
Yeah. Well, you can do general studies, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how everybody should start. Because
Right.
when I thought I wanted to be a lawyer and I was like, started to take certain classes and then I was like, that's not what I want. And then I started taking random and then I did the programming class and I was like, I love it so much. And so that was like my superpower. And then you were like, oh, well, the company I work for has an opening with your qualifications and it's an IT company. And I was like, yes, please, thank you. And it all worked out and it was fabulous. And
It's funny because I worked for a different company before that, which I loved. I met my best friend there. But it's interesting how even if it's not exactly the work you want to do, it sets you in a direction, right?
yeah,
And it changes your trajectory completely.
yes.
And I'm grateful for working there, even though that's not what my ultimate goal. But those people took me seriously as a person.
I understand what you mean 100%. And even like James Way, which was just to have people look at me differently than all
You
the
were an
people
authority figure. You're like, go check out now.
yeah.
Do it now.
Or just even the people I worked with who were my peers were not the peers that I went to school with my entire life and didn't look at me like, oh, you're that poor girl who is dirty all the time and wears raggedy clothes. That was a game changer. And I think so, and maybe that's part of a dopamine hit that even though it might not be something that you're passionate about on the actual work level, there's a
Social
different
aspect.
Yeah. And that's what gives you the hit. And you're like, oh man, I love this so much.
I would agree with that entirely.
time.
And that was the place that allowed me to push back because I had some issues with my boss and I was like, I'd never been able to talk back before.
Right.
And I talked back to him
Yeah.
and he was like, get the hell out. And I was like, fine, I'll leave. It's interesting, like, if you were to talk back to your parents, the repercussions are like lifelong. But if you were to like tell your boss or your manager at your work when you're 17, screw you. I get that you're trying to be a weird weasel at me, but I'm going to reject that. And they'll be like, get out. And I'll be like, I'm going to throw my smock at you. And my blue and orange smock. And I will leave. But that doesn't affect my whole life. Like the pushing back, like that was the first time I ever pushed back at something.
And it's exhilarating.
Mr. Pixler.
Yes. It's so exhilarating. It's exhilarating.
I wonder what he's doing today. We should Google him. Go ahead on to the LinkedIn and be like, hey, Mr. Pixler.
Our reason for this podcast is to support and uplift women in recognizing the impact undiagnosed ADHD has on their lives and to know that they are not alone. Discovery and grieving for what life could have been if we had only known and had help can be hard sometimes. If you have any thoughts you would like to share, you can email us at genx.adhd.sisters@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. #GenX ADHD Sisters.